Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Renew podcast, where we teach you how to reclaim your life without losing your edge. I am your host, Kristen Andre, and I'm excited today, as I always am. But today I have with me my friend Jeff Henderson of the Four Company, formerly of North Point Ministries and Gwinnett County Church. And we've been trying to coordinate this for a while, my friend. So I am excited to have you on the show.
I'm so honored to be here, Kristen. Good to see you. Wish we could be in person, but thanks for having me on the podcast.
Well, even if we could be in person, you've been, ever since you launched the Four Companies, because I know you and Wendy made a big move recently to step down from ministry and launch the Four Companies. You've been traveling all over.
Kristen, I was in Denver 2 days ago. It was -8.
No,
-8.
That is not okay. You should have. I would have come right back.
Yeah, well, 2 days before that, I was in Chicago, where it was a balmy 3.
Oh,
so I grew up in Atlanta. Both Wendy and I, we just, what in the world? So, but it was so fun. The people were great. But we've been doing a lot of virtual stuff as well. But honestly, it seems like things are kind of opening up, at least from a speaking standpoint, a little bit. So I was in Chicago, Denver, and then I'll be in West Palm in a couple of days. So
West Palm sounds a lot better than Chicago and Denver. No offense to my Chicago and Denver friends, but
I'm trending in the right direction.
A little warmer. I'm glad to hear it's opening up. I know we've had that too, where a lot of the conferences that I typically speak at have gone virtual and are staying that way. A lot of them in the financial sector are staying that way through most of the year. So I'm glad to hear things are opening up, because I could use some real life people in front of people.
It's strange to be speaking and there's actually people in the room.
I know. I like it. I miss that. I miss the connection with people. Miss it. All right. Well, I'm excited to have you, because I read your book when it first came out, because I think it was, I don't know how long ago we were at Buckhead Church and you'd done something there. And what's interesting is yours is called Four, and my book is called You're Not For Everyone. But the interesting thing is our messages are the same. It's really how, it's a matter of kind of what you stand for, what you want to be known for. So tell us a little bit about kind of what made you do this, because you've got like such an incredible corporate history, but then your history in the ministry too. I think that you wove them together really well. So what made you launch it?
Well, to your point, Kristen, I've been really blessed. I worked in the marketing department at Chick-fil-A, so just a really thriving multi-billion-dollar company. And then I was blessed to work for North Point Ministries, which was recently named the largest church in America. And I don't know if that's true or even if that's important. But the
it seems very big when I'm there.
Yes. So I was telling a mentor, 3 years ago, wow, I'm really blessed. And he challenged me a little bit and said, well, yeah, you have been blessed, but there's a stewardship responsibility. You've worked for a thriving business and a thriving nonprofit. You've been on kind of the front row there, and you owe it to the rest of us to teach us what you learned about how these organizations grew. And if you could boil it down to half a piece of paper, that would be even better. And I thought, I think I can do that. So it really kind of came down to these two questions. And the reason I think this is important, I really do believe one of the best ways that we can improve the world is to have thriving organizations that have thriving work cultures that solve problems. Yeah. And I think any thriving community needs thriving businesses, thriving schools, thriving nonprofit organizations. And every time an organization gets better, I think the world improves a little bit better. So so I just began to reflect what caused these organizations and other organizations and entrepreneurs and small businesses to grow. And how you define growth can be, myriad of different ways.
Right.
So how one company defines growth, how one church defines growth, it could all be different. But at the end of the day, I think growth is healthy, because healthy things grow, unhealthy things die. And so we never started an organization to want it to
well,
die.
No, but don't you think it has so much to do with the people in it? Because that's one of the things that I like about the message is, we've got to all find our place. We've got to figure out where we all belong. And there's an opportunity for the organizations to help steward that, but there's also an opportunity for the people within it too, to find what they can really fight for and be for in the place that they belong. And I missed that. We did an episode a few weeks ago on the educational system, and my daughter came in. I know your son's podcasting now too. And, the kids seem to get this. Like, they get that we need to figure out kind of what their thing is and what they're for and the people that are for them. But adults, I feel like we missed that. Somewhere we lost it along the way.
You're exactly right. In fact, if you look at marketing demographics right now, Kristen, the younger you ask, the more the demographics are saying, hey, what is your organization doing to help make the world a better place? And some may not be that exact words, but if you're not helping us get better, we're probably not going to do business with you.
Right.
And that's, I think, both challenging and very, very encouraging. And I think as business leaders, we can't take away the humanity of the business.
Right.
And we've got all this great technology. I mean, you and I are leveraging technology right now. That's awesome. But don't miss the humanity of the business.
Right.
And to your point, really genuinely being for people is great business. I mean, I say in the book, doing good is good for business. And it's not a manipulative thing. It really needs to come from your heart. But at the end of the day, I don't think we want to get to the end of our careers and see that we gave our lives to things that just ultimately won't stand the test of time.
Or that didn't matter.
I think there's the book isn't a call for anti-profit. I think profit leads to purpose, and purpose can fuel more profit. So all those go together. I happen to be on both worlds and have lived in both worlds, the for-profit world and the nonprofit world. And I just feel like purpose and profit now travel together, and that's a really good thing.
Well, and I know with your work in the ministry, nowhere in the Bible is it saying don't make a profit. Don't, we want to do good, but doing good and being good and helping others is a big thing. I'm big on helping others. It's kind of my jam. I like that. I've always liked that. And I think there's nothing wrong with making a profit, but you do have to know kind of what you said. One of the first questions you asked is, what do you want to be known for? Because you asked two questions in the book, which I flagged. You said, what do you want to be known for? And then what are you known for? And then once those two align, and that what you're known for and what you actually want to be for are the same thing, that's when you can really make an impact. So if we're putting out a message that isn't us, or what we think we're doing is not what we're aligned with what we're doing, that's where it gets difficult.
Exactly. And that first question, what do you want to be known for? That's the vision. That's what, Kristen, you want to bring uniquely to the marketplace, what I want to bring uniquely to the marketplace. So that's our vision. It's true for a church, nonprofit, or business. But then the second question is the challenging one, because it's not really ours to answer. That's that's the people that we serve. That's our customers. And they're reflecting back to us whether or not we're delivering on our brand promise in question number one. But to your point, when these two questions match, when the answers to these two questions match, when what you want to be known for is what you're known for, and it's compelling, then you create vision carriers, and they tell people about you. They tell people about your church or your business or your real estate company, all of that. And that's how this works.
And that's where I think we have an opportunity as business leaders or as entrepreneurs to empower our team to find that, because so many, I read an article recently, I think it was in Forbes, on personal branding and letting people in your team be themselves, because we don't want a bunch of little robots running behind us. And this was part of the challenge I had with the educational system. It's we're cookie cuttering everybody, and we can't cookie cutter them. We need to let them use. I'm a big proponent of using your God-given gifts. We have to let everybody use their gifts. And I feel like I think adults have a harder time with this again than the kids do, because we try to make everybody fit in this little box. And to the extent we can let them be themselves, do you feel that helps them be for others? If they can be themselves?
Absolutely. And to your point, I think there's a reckoning coming with college education. I think right now, honestly, I think it's overpriced and overvalued.
Yes.
And these students get out with massive student loan debts, and they're really handcuffed. And I think many of them and parents are now waking up going, you know what? I think there's a better way to get to where I want to go to my future. And they'll take a little bit of this and work for maybe a year and maybe take these kind of courses and classes. I think you're seeing a reckoning, especially with what has happened with COVID and everything shifting online. And many universities are still charging the same amount, even though these kids aren't going to class.
I hope we're seeing a reckoning, because we did the educational system a couple weeks ago. We're doing debt, and we're doing debt next week is actually the topic we're covering on the show. But I'm hearing that from everybody, and that goes back to kids using their gifts. I mean, I have, as you know, I have 3 girls, and one of the 3 is probably a little more, maybe not college, but she's gonna run the world one day. Like, she knows what she's for. You've had the opportunity to meet her. She's a little firecracker. I'm not worried about her, but she's not cut out for this traditional box. And I feel like we squish kids there.
And that would be my fear for her, is that she would go into a system that would crush who she is.
Right.
And well, all three of your daughters are going to be great. They are great. She's going to be just fine. And that's what I've told my son. I'm like, here he is launching our podcast and all this, and you're going to be fine, whether or not, you are successful in the academic realm. Academics are important, but to your point, how can we be genuinely for these individuals and these students and these customers? And that's why I really do believe that the more personable you are, the more remarkable that you will be as an organization. Our mutual friend Andy Stanley says, "Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone." That's great business strategy as well. And that's why I put in the book, these two questions are not just a growth strategy for work, they're a growth strategy for your personal life, because you personally need to know, what am I for? Who am I for? And how am I living that out?
Do you think most people know that? Because I feel like a lot of people do, but I'm somebody who's done a lot of therapy, a lot of self-development work. I don't know if people naturally know that. I feel like we have, I call them God winks, where, got that line from a movie, where we just get those nudges in the right direction. And I feel like a lot of people get those. We all get them, but a lot of folks ignore it and just kind of move. How do you uncover that?
I agree with you. I don't think most people know it. And here's why. It's not a fault of theirs. It's just, these two questions, especially question number one, it just seems so easy, but it's not easy. Yep. It's simple, but it's not easy. And I'll give you an example from organizational world. It's true for organizations as well. What do we want to be known for? I think every leader probably listening to this goes, if I walk around the office or get on a Zoom call and ask people what we want to be known for and put it in the chat, all the answers are going to be the same.
Yep.
My experience has been in consulting with organizations, when I ask their leadership teams to write down, don't say out loud, write down what you think this organization wants to be known for, and I'll collect the pieces of paper, and then I read them, Kristen, and then you see all these different answers, and all the eyes in the room get this big, and think, how did we not know this? One of my favorite stories is there was a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company that kept saying, all right, the main thing is keeping the main thing the main thing. Said that over and over again.
I've heard that a lot. Yeah.
Well, in this particular case, somebody raises their hand after hearing this for years and say, hey, can you remind me again what the main thing is? And the CEO says this, and then the CFO goes, I didn't know that was the main thing. I thought the main thing was this. So there was confusion among the leadership team.
Yeah.
So this question, what do you want to be known for? I think it's not an easy question. It's simple. But the other good thing about this, Kristen, is there doesn't have to be one answer to this, especially personally. You can have a variety of different answers. But ultimately, it's that second question when we would have to go to the people.
Yeah.
I would have to go to the people in your life, and you would have to go to the people in my life and say, here's what Jeff and Kristen want to be known for. Now, let me ask you, are they living up to that? And there's going to be a gap, let's be honest, because no one listening, no one watching is perfect. But we've been given another day and another day to close the gap. And that's the goal, I think, of any person, any organization. We all come to work to close the gap between what we want to be known for and what we are known for.
And I think that's a great thing to do, but it does require getting feedback from other people. Whether it's doing the corporate world, we all do 360s. Any of us in leaderships have always done 360s where we have other people give feedback. And I've always found that really fascinating to kind of see where that gap was so you could start to close it. But it starts with knowing what you're for. And it's, I think that's huge. And I wish more people would take that message and start to figure that out.
Yeah, it's really a journey toward more emotional awareness and emotional intelligence.
Yep.
And that's another thing that I think we're probably not teaching enough of in the academic realm is emotional intelligence. It's really the soft skills that make or break a career.
I don't know that we're teaching any of it, to tell you the truth.
That's why I think a great question to ask is, to your point, is what's it like to be on the other side of me? You're asking people, hey, what's it like to work with me?
Yep.
What's it like to be my friend?
Yeah.
What's it like to be my coworker? And we've never been on the other side of us, so we don't know. So that information's out there.
Yep.
But if we don't ask it and if we don't go for it, we'll be the only ones that don't have the answer.
Do you think people are afraid to ask that?
Absolutely. And they should be afraid, Kristen. Let's be honest.
I'm afraid to ask my kids. I have asked my kids that. The kids give me the worst feedback. They're the most brutally honest. I know exactly what it's like to be on the other side of me as a parent.
Right. Well, imagine my world. I preached on this several years ago. And so the staff would just sit me down and go, okay, you remember you preached on that 3 years ago? Let me tell you what it's like to be on the other side of you right now. But dude, you're going to get three pieces of feedback. You're going to get some encouraging information. You're going to get some surprising information that you weren't aware of, and you're going to get your feelings hurt.
Yeah.
But it will require courage to ask that question, because what I've realized is if I don't ask the question, it doesn't mean the information goes away. It's still there. Right. I just don't have access to it. And when I don't have access to it, if I don't have the courage to go after it, then I'm not going to grow. And you know this from all the success you've had. You can't have the success that you've had without being uncomfortable. And the reason I say that is growth is uncomfortable. It's not. In fact, the season I'm in right now, I mean, imagine a career change in the midst of a global pandemic. This is really stretching me, but I'm growing in leaps and bounds in ways that I probably wouldn't have if I just stayed in a job I loved, but I felt called to a new season, and I just feel the growth is happening, but it's very uncomfortable.
Growth is supposed to be uncomfortable. If it were comfortable, everybody would do it. But all right, so I have a question on that, because I saw when you made the announcement, I saw that, and this was a big choice, and you mentioned in the middle of a global pandemic, and the way you said it, you said I made a career change. You didn't make a career change. You basically upended your entire world. So, and I've read some of the blog posts, because you have a great, kind of newsletter that comes out. So walk me through kind of what people can do and what the process you and Wendy went through to figure out, because that was a big change. I mean, you literally left a nice position and a lot of comfort and a big, big, big community to do something, I won't say completely different, but in a completely different realm. So had to have been a lot of fear in that.
There is a lot of fear.
I think you wrote about that this week. So what's the process? I mean, as people are looking at this, because a lot of people lost jobs last year and are still unemployed. I mean, I have a family member who's been unemployed for over a year now, and it's hard to find stuff. So with all the fear out there, what do you do to move forward, or what would you encourage people to do so they don't just stay frozen? Right.
Well, fortunately for Wendy and me, we've been through seasons like this before. When I was at Chick-fil-A and left to help start Buckhead Church in the early days of Buckhead Church, that was a big move. Yep. And because back in the day, Kristen, I mean, right now, multi-site video church, churches do that all over the world. Buckhead was one of the first. So I'm leaving a very stable job with people I love, a job I love, to go help start a church where the preacher's on video. It was just the most bizarre, crazy thing. Yeah. But we had done the due diligence. Part of it was, there's a biblical principle, whatever you might believe about the Bible, there's a biblical principle that I think is true. And that is, plans fail for lack of advisors, but with counsel, plans succeed. And so we had a lot of people in our life looking at that situation and going, yes, we feel like this is the right thing for you to do. And you mentioned
when you wrote about this, sorry to cut you off, you wrote about this week or last week or something, and you mentioned that the counsel you sought were from people that knew you guys, knew your hearts, knew your gifts. Because sometimes and part of my you're not for everyone is that not everybody knows that. So sometimes I'll see people seeking counsel from so many people that don't have a vested interest, that don't know their hearts, and that's not the wise way to seek counsel. So were you guys pretty determined in who you were seeking it from?
Yes, that's a great point. In fact, you can ask too many people.
Right.
So
I see that happen a lot.
It's not the numbers of people. It's I don't like to say quality of people, but it's the quality of the counsel that you're getting. For example, when we left, so we launched Buckhead Church, and that's an incredible, so many incredible members, 8-year run. Andy Stanley asked Wendy and me to launch Gwinnett Church. So we had a group, did the same thing. Group of advisors sat down, looked at this, and everybody gave me a green light. Well, the same people that gave me the green light for the Buckhead to Gwinnett Church decision were the same people that gave me the green light for this decision. Okay. And so track record, multi-year track record in terms of knowing us. And for example, I have a personal board of advisors, which I would highly recommend for anyone. Huge. And we meet once a quarter, and then Wendy comes in and meets occasionally as well. And so for that particular board, if I had gotten a red light from any of them, we would have slowed down. And we actually did slow down when the pandemic hit, because we were going to leave in the spring, because we had targeted We began to sense a year and a half ago that when Cole graduated from high school and we became empty nesters, that would be a new season for us. And it was actually brought to our attention with our board of advisors when they said, hey, what are you thinking about your empty nesting years? And I thought, well, I'm not really thinking about anything. And they said, well, you need to pay attention to that. And so that really began a series of conversations. And
that's about when the book came. The book came out when? When did it came out before the pandemic?
Yes, it came out in October of
2019.
Yeah, and that was another thing. So it's not just advisors. What the advisors advised me to do is to pay attention to what's happening. So when the book came out, I went on a 24-city book tour, and really to try to test this content out. And everywhere I went, it just kind of blew up in a really good way.
What were you hearing in those cities across the country? Like when testing it out, were they lacking? Because I know we have Wendy watching, who was commenting on Facebook, and she is a culture experience officer for her firm. She's in finance and banking. And what were you experiencing? Because I just see, like, with the 4 message, people are struggling culture-wise. Were you hearing that from the places you were visiting?
Yes. First of all, shout out to Wendy for watching. Thanks for watching, Wendy. And so folks like Wendy, Kristen, would say, oh, you've given me, we're kind of doing this, but you've given me language to be able to communicate to our team. Language is really, really important. And so, for example, I went a few weeks ago to speak at a company called Rustic Cuff. Jill Donovan is the CEO. I don't know if you're familiar with this company or not, but they do bracelets. It's amazing. Rustic Cuff.
Okay. I like bracelets. Okay.
You'll love Jill and you'll love their company. But I gave a talk to their company, and their team, I had some Q&A, and they said, and especially the customer service team said, oh, this is what we do. We just didn't have a language for it. And now we know that we are for our customers and we are for our team. So the language was important. Consistency, saying it over and over again. But for the other thing is, I would go in, what I would do, Kristen, I would go and speak at a church on Sunday and then stick around and do a business breakfast on Monday and talk about the book. And every single time, 2 hours afterwards, of course, this is pre-pandemic, 2 hours, people would come up, business leaders, and they just resonated with the message because they said, I want to stand for something, and I want my business to stand for something, and I need to rally around what I'm for. In fact, quick example, I had a couple who are auditors, all right? They came up and they said, we want to be known as the friendly auditors, but this has given us language and a purpose to try to figure out how do we communicate this better to our team, because it's in our hearts, but we just need to be able to communicate it. So that's what was resonating with a lot of people. And I think for a lot of people, they said it kind of started giving them hope that I can have, because let me give you an example. When I left Chick-fil-A to go into full-time ministry, people would say, oh, you went into full-time ministry. I'm like, I don't really like that phrase. I think we're all, wherever you may be spiritually, I think we're all in full-time ministry in the sense of serving others, to your point. And I think combining purpose and profit, people, we need to go to work. We got to pay the bills. But at the end of the day, we want to have purpose to go alongside of that. So what I kept hearing was, oh, this is giving me some language to be able to figure out what I want to be known for and my purpose, both organizationally and personally. And that was very encouraging. And when I heard that, I just kept coming home to Wendy and saying, I think we got to do this full time.
Yeah. Well, and this is because then you're getting your questions answered. So what do you, as you're coming across these people, because I'll frequently hear from my clients and, my private coaching clients that there's a disconnect between the C-suite and the organization. And I have clients in the C-suite, and then I have clients in organizations. So what do you advise people? Because I think language is a big thing, and I feel like everybody's got to get on the same page. I personally feel if we all knew our gifts and used them the right way, collectively, I really think we all fit together as soon as we can understand our gifts. But when there's that disconnect between kind of management, if you will, or the C-suite and the rest of the organization, how do you counsel those type of companies, people, anything?
I think proximity is really, really important.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is putting yourself in front of the team, which is harder to do nowadays. But that's why at both Buckhead Church and Gwinnett Church, I didn't have an office. I would sit out in the break room and with my laptop because I just wanted to be around and have the conversations with people.
Okay.
and
That's
just
kind of
be,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, well, it just helped me so much because I got to hear firsthand what was really happening.
Yep.
And the challenge with the C-suite executives is the further up you go in the organization, if you're not careful, the further away you get from information, and the further you get away from what's really happening, and the further you get away from your customer. And I think, for example, in my previous life as a quick service restaurant executive, one of the mistakes I think a lot of franchise organizations are making is they're allowing people to buy like 30, 50, 75 restaurants at a time.
Okay.
And the problem with that is the owner of that business gets really further removed from the customer. And they don't understand, if they don't spend any time in the drive-through window right now, they don't really know what's happening in the business. And you can look at it from a distance on a spreadsheet, but it will not give you the nuances that you need. So to try to bridge the gap, you got to have proximity. You got to be on Zoom calls. You got to be calling people. You got to be sending videos out. I mean, during the pandemic with Gwinnett Church, I was sending a weekly video out on our staff's GroupMe Slack channels saying, hey, here's what's going on, here's what's happening. And then I just handed out phone numbers of everybody in the church and said, all right, we're divvying up all these calls, and we're going to start calling people personally and just asking them, how you doing? We're just checking in today. That's the purpose of the call. We're not asking you for anything other than we'd love to know how you're doing. And that proximity, then I would get feedback, and I did the calls as well. I think, as a pastor, I think when I call people thought that they were in trouble.
They thought they were in trouble. I know, I would have felt like I was getting called to the principal's office.
That's right. Yeah.
But the proximity thing is good because that is so, you want to call it, it's not basic, it's simple. It's a simple thing to do, just to reach out to somebody and say, hey, how you doing? One of the things I do in my business, I call them reach outs, and I do a minimum of 5 a day. I'm still a handwritten note person, so I do handwritten notes still a couple times a week. But I'm a reach out person, and my minimum is 5 a day, and it is, and there's no purpose behind it other than, hey, just thinking about you. And sometimes people like, thanks, but sometimes people like open up and they needed something, or they've got something going on where it's good. I've got a friend of mine that was one of my reach outs the other day that I know is going through a really, really tough time. And I didn't reach out and do anything. I just sent a quick text and said, hey, I know you're dealing with a lot, just thinking about you, praying for you. And it's good. And I got this like long response, and it was great because it started a dialogue. And I feel like it is the proximity, which doesn't have to be in person. It could be text, phone, what have you.
Absolutely. I love the phrase reach out, by the way.
Yep.
And the other thing about that, Kristen, is when the boss calls, for many people, they go, oh no, what did I do wrong?
Right.
That's their first response.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it must be negative. Something must be.
That just means the boss doesn't reach out enough, because if they're only calling, because typically they do call when something's wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, that goes back to the question, what do you want to be known for? So right now, when the boss calls and the team goes, oh no, she's calling me, that must mean something was wrong. That's not what you want to be known for.
No.
You don't want to be known for the boss that calls with negative news all the time.
Yeah.
And people, and again, it goes back to our earlier point, don't miss the humanity of the business. And when the boss calls to reach out,
yes,
like you do, it's disarming. And I think sometimes, Kristen, the reason, and how people respond is how people respond, right?
Right.
But sometimes when people respond, they're just shocked.
Yeah.
They don't know how to respond. Like when I would call people at the church and say, hey, it's Jeff, just calling to check on you, they would go, is this really you? I mean,
that's funny. Yeah.
Again, it's those personable, remarkable, memorable. Personable leads to remarkable, and remarkable leads to memorable. And we wanted to grow a small organization. We wanted to grow, but we still wanted to maintain the small feel.
Well, and I do feel like a large organization can still feel small, and that's what you want. And you having a background with Chick-fil-A, I think leads to that. I mean, honestly, if we could put Chick-fil-A drive-in processes in charge of the government, the world, whatever, we'd all be much more efficient because they have got it down. But I do feel it's personal. My small group used to meet at Chick-fil-A's back when we were still meeting in person. And it was fantastic. We know all the people that worked there. We had John who came out and refilled our waters and did everything every week. I mean, it was great. Like but it was that personal touch. And most of us went there on days that we didn't have group just because we felt like we knew the people. But you're right. It was the personal connection. It was never anything big. It was just a hello or what have you. But that's critical. How can, the reach outs, I encourage my clients all to do that. And I tell them, I let go of the outcome, and I don't care who you reach out to. Those are my basic rules. It can be a friend, a family member, a client, a prospect, whatever. But you can't be asking for anything. Like there can be no ulterior motive other than just checking in. Like what are some other ways people can connect with, their people, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think many organizations forget the social in social media. So they're just talking about their organization, they're talking about their business, and they never leave their platform to go on the platform of someone else and just say, hey, we see you. And so at Gwinnett Church, we would begin our staff meetings by just going to Instagram, searching hashtag for Gwinnett, and just comment on people's Instagram pages and post. And people would just lose their minds and go, because they would say, oh, it must be the Gwinnett Church staff meeting because they're blowing up my
they're blowing up your feed. Yeah.
And so that's what I feel like a lot of organizations, entrepreneurs, large organizations miss, is they forget the social in social media, and they're not doing social media. When I talk to brands and I tell them that they're not doing social media, they lose their minds because they're like, no, we can show you our Instagram page, our Facebook page.
They're pushing content as opposed to engage. I'm big on engagement. I feel like if companies and brands and organizations, no matter how big they are, could engage their ideal and their target market, we'd be a lot better.
Absolutely. And again, but you have to have a system. So you mentioned the system. You have 5 thank you notes or 5 reach outs you want to do a day. I have 3, so you're 2 better than me, which is not surprising to me. But what that means is that, so when I was traveling this weekend, I had to make sure that I had thank you notes with me, so that when I'm on the plane, I'm not just having good intentions. I'm turning good intentions into reality and sustaining it by setting myself up to go, okay, I got some time on the plane. Yeah. And I wrote handwritten thank you notes to the people at the church that invited me and mailed them yesterday. Okay. And it's interesting too, Kristen, when I left Gwinnett Church, one of the things I heard was, you wrote me a note 2 years ago, and you wrote me a note, 5 years ago. People hang on to those notes. And, but it reminds me, because I can get, even in nonprofit world, trust me, you can get drawn into numbers and, running this machine and, all of that. You got to pay the light bill. You still have to pay the light bill, whether you're a for-profit business or a nonprofit organization. Yep. You can get drawn into all that and just get overwhelmed with the machinery of the organization. Reach outs like what you're talking about reminded me of why I got into this in the first place. I didn't get into this to run an organization. I got into this to impact people. Now, to impact people, I need to run and lead a great, well-run organization. Yep. But at the end of the day, I can't let the organization outpace my care and interest for people. And you've got to get back to your why and your for, what you're for. I mean, for me, it's always been, I always say, I want to, empower people to grow personally, professionally, and financially. So whatever that looks like, I don't know. I hope that's what, I need to probably ask more people. I hope that's what people are seeing that I'm for, but you get these nudges that you're doing it the right way. I know Wendy just commented because she had, said on Facebook Messenger, Wendy had messaged me on Facebook the other day, and I replied, and she and I have not met in person. So it's one of those things where I love engaging with folks, because if you can just give them a nugget of wisdom or just some advice or just my coach used to tell me her job was to pat me on the back when I did well and dust me off and push me back out the door when I needed it. And that's where, if we can just do those things with people and use our gifts, then it just, things start to fit, I think, a little easier. And it makes the fact that we're going to spend, a third of our lives, if not more, at work, it makes the time. I feel like I'm going to spend like 90% of my life at work someday. Right. But it just makes it more meaningful, I think. And even, I like you with all the, when you're doing your talks and virtual presentations, I see these these Zoom calls and these presentations, and it looks like people are, and again, they're staring at a screen. I totally get this, but it looks like they're miserable.
Yeah.
So one of the things I tell people is, hey, here's a tip. When you're on Zoom, smile more. That'll help your career just by smiling more. And so, but you just want to bring some joy, and I really do believe, in fact, Patrick Lencioni, he has one, that he's written, bestsellers, organizational leadership consultant. He says the one thing he looks for when he comes into an organization that he looks for that is the telltale sign of whether or not they're a thriving organization is not any of the hard skills, if you will. He's looking for joy.
Yes.
He's looking for joy in the business. He's looking for joy. And if there's not joy, it's going to impact the bottom line, which I just thought was so fascinating.
It is.
I felt like that was true, but didn't have somebody like Patrick Lencioni say it. I'm like, no.
Then you feel like, yes, that's right. Because I remember reading one of my leadership teams, and I was on before I launched on my own. We did 5 dysfunctions of a team. I think we had 4.5 of them. But it is. But the joy thing is so big. I have a girlfriend, Linda, who owns a kind of coffee beverage. Like, she comes in to. If you go to a company and you've got your coffee machines and your vending machines, that's what she does. That's what her company does. And she launched it last year in the middle of a pandemic. She'd been in the industry forever, but launched her company. And her tagline is bringing joy to the workplace. And it's so interesting that you said that word, because as soon as she said that, and I know her, and that's just her, she's so bubbly. And it's interesting because her business is coffee and snacks, which you normally think about as coffee and snacks. But she's like, nope, we're bringing joy. And she lights up when she talks about it and when she goes. And I'm like, well, no wonder people want to work with you, because that's really, she doesn't talk about coffee. She does when she gets in and figure out what they need. But when she approaches these companies, it's bringing joy to the workplace is her tagline. And I'm like, oh, no wonder they're taking off, because people are craving that.
I love that. That's why, at Chick-fil-A, they say they're not in the chicken business, they're in the people business.
Yes.
And we're all in the people business. I don't care if you're just 100% pure technology. At some point, there's a human being at some point, somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
And that's why like what she's bringing, Kristen, to the table, again, she will never miss the humanity of the business.
Yep.
And I think businesses like that will be rewarded because it's so refreshingly different, and there's something, I think, within us that wants to be valued and appreciated.
And it's, it goes back to everything. And Linda is, it's called Seventh Wave Refreshment. She's a very strong Christian, very spiritual person, and she really felt like you led to do that, led to launch that company. And I feel like if we can listen to our nudges and our God winks a little bit more, then we could go in the right direction.
Yeah, there's so many people I know. A friend of mine, Sid Mashburn, who owns a fashion brand in Atlanta. He launched his store in Atlanta during the Great Recession in 2008.
They had he was on a podcast I heard, or him, and he's friends with Amy, my stylist, and they're a fascinating. He's fascinating.
Oh yeah, he and Ann are great.
Yeah,
but they have an even better story.
Yeah.
Versus we launched this business when the economy was booming.
Yep.
They launched this business in the Great Recession, high-end retail, high-end fashion, like really, seriously? And now here they are thriving 12, 13 years later.
Yeah.
Well, Linda and I are, and here you are doing what you're doing. We're going to have some great stories to tell. It's not easy, but fear never really writes a great story. And
I like
so again, you have to be wise. That's what I've been telling everybody that asked me about my career change. You have to understand, it was a slow process, and there was a lot of prayer, a lot of counsel. Everybody I talked to we even went to my 93-year-old mom and got a green light from her. Yeah. So I'm not telling you to do anything dumb, but at the end of the day, when you know this is what to do, the riskiest thing to do isn't to go. The riskiest thing to do is to stay, because there's risk involved in any decision. And when you decide to stay, there's actually risk involved in that as well.
Yeah,
so you just got to
probably
know.
More risk in staying.
Absolutely.
Bad.
And there'll always be a gap. You're always going to have to leap, right?
Right.
But I don't think we're called to have this, Grand Canyon. I think we can close it in. But still, I'm in the middle of this, there's still a gap, and
Yep.
I'm in midair, and
Yep.
but we'll parachute or get to the other side. We'll figure it out. But I feel like we're writing a really cool story that 5-10 years from now we'll be able to share.
Well, and I love the way you put that. Fear never writes a good story. So for those of us, as we close, for those of people listening that do have a fear about whether it's personal, professional, financial, because I think it permeates everything, all aspects of our lives. Like, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give somebody? Let's start with those adulting right now, and then we'll get to kids in a minute. But what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give somebody, an adult, that does have fear that's keeping them from going where they're feeling called or nudged?
Kristen, this may sound odd. And when I say this, people may say, Jeff, we think you need a therapist. The good news is I do have one.
Right?
So no one should be.
I've got great ones. No.
But what happens with fear is that fear tries to go quiet in your mind and just try, and you have all these thoughts and you stay in your brain, right? You stay in your mind. And so much of that is, what if it doesn't work? And, did you see the latest this or news about this or that? So I think you literally have to speak out loud against the fear and say, quiet, be still.
Yep.
I just feel like you have to, because fear loves silence. Courage loves volume.
Yep.
And when you speak out against the fear, you kind of wake yourself up and go. And for people watching today and they say, I don't talk to myself. Yeah, come on. We all talk to ourselves, right? So I think you have to say, quiet, I'm in charge, not the fear. And then I have to go back to, okay, did I go through wise counsel? Yep. I went through all wise counsel. And then I have to go at the end of the day, all the people that I saw on that 24 city business tour, do I want to say no to them? And people like them because I'm scared.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, my kids are watching, and I want them to see their dad not obeying fear, but in my case, from a faith standpoint, obeying God who says go.
Yep.
And again, as I read the scriptures, so many people that ventured out didn't know where they were going.
Right.
And I'm kind of making this up as I go along.
Isn't that what faith is, though? Venturing out when you don't know the outcome?
Absolutely. And that's, again, part of experience is, it helps you, evaluating your experience. So looking back at Chick-fil-A and leaving the Buckhead Church, there was a strong likelihood that wouldn't work, right? Video preacher and all that kind of stuff. But here's another important point. I left Chick-fil-A really, really well. I wrote every single person in the marketing department. It was 70 people at the time. Notes. I met individually with the executive team to say thank you. In essence, what I was saying, Kristen, is if Buckhead Church doesn't work out,
I'm coming back. Don't burn the bridges. Yeah.
When you burn, and even if you're in a very difficult work environment, if you burn the bridge, you're actually the one that gets burned the most. And so don't do that. So when I left Buckhead Church, same thing. And then when I left Gwinnett Church, I wrote every single staff person a handwritten note. I met individually with every single staff person to say thank you. I did a presentation saying, hey, one final thing, just from my perspective, as you go forward, here, a few things I would keep in mind as you lead this church going forward. There's a scripture that says, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Yep. And you have to lead really, really well. And I'll also say this, for those that are trying to figure out, what the next move is, the path to your next job, the path to your dream job actually leads through your day job more often than not. So really be a good steward of where you are. And for those of you, looking for work right now, Kristen and I totally understand that. And I'm not saying this because our books say this, but we are genuinely for you. Yep. And hang in there. And the fact that you're watching this says something about you, that you're wanting to learn, you're wanting to grow. Yeah. And that's a really, 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 really good sign. So
I think it's the same for the kids out there too. Any different message you give, because I know your kids are a little bit older since you guys are empty nesters now, but you've got a boy and a girl they're starting to adult a little bit and getting in the real world. So what do you say to the kids this is a confusing time to be a kid or a teen or early 20s?
Absolutely. Well, my daughter is a college senior. So she just we got a text from her last night. I just ordered my cap and gown. Oh. So she graduates in May. So imagine being a college graduate. Yep. And going, okay, where, in fact, I talked to the daughter of a friend of ours. She's a friend, and she's graduating this May as well from the University of Alabama, and she's going, what do I do?
Yeah.
And so again, it's those small, I keep telling them, be faithful where you are in those small steps. So you don't have to figure out the next 30 years of your life. You just need to figure out the next 3 months. And
that's
so
wise.
What can you do to set yourself up for the next 3 to 6 to 9 months? Because the reality, your parents and mine, working years for, one or a couple of organizations, that day is gone.
Yep.
And in your 20s, you really want to find out what you're good at.
Yes.
And that's why
and
I feel
what you
like
get energy from. I'm a big person with following the energy. I think the energy leads us a lot if we let it.
Right.
Like, what do you get?
I think that's a
excitement
better
around?
question. Where do you get energy from?
Yeah.
I think that's a much better question than what's your major going to be?
Right.
Because they don't know. That's why, most college students change their major at least once, if not twice. I just don't think it's a helpful question for most of them. Like, if you want to be a doctor, okay, got it. We're going to go down that road.
There are a few careers like that.
do.
Yeah, there are a few careers you kind of have to go. I mean, my major has nothing to do with what I do now. I don't even know that I'd need school for what I did now, but it's the energy. Like the line I use a lot in my book and with clients is, if it's not bringing you energy or moving you closer to your goals, you need to say no. Whether it's a person, a thing, an organization, an opportunity, whatever it is, if you let those two things guide you, it gets a little bit easier. Because then you know what you're for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the way I would say it from a faith standpoint is God's thumbprints on you are clues about his plans for you. So that just means what to your point, where does your energy come from? What does interest you? And there are things that we are interested in that we're not gifted in, or we're not gifted to the ability that we need to be to make a career out of it. I mean, was really interested in basketball, but I was not gifted enough to make it to the NBA.
I was interested in singing.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean I'm
not gifted.
Don't play basketball, or you should stop singing. But there's gifting and passion, and then there's strengths and understanding. And I think your 20s isn't the time where you figure out your career path.
Yeah.
Your 20s is trying to figure out what you're good at, what you enjoy, what brings you energy, and being curious that leads you to your 30s.
Love it.
And your 30s are when serious adulting happens.
Yes.
So.
Yes. All the responsibilities come. That's it. Because you're tied it all in. Because we did curiosity last week. It's true. It's all these things that come together. So, all right. So I know we are coming up on time. Thank you so much. You guys have got to. I'm going to put a link to the book, because if you guys haven't had it, Wendy, because I know you're watching and you've asked some great questions, and we had this conversation this week online because we were being social on social. So I'm gonna send Wendy one of these books, because I think she would love this. So Wendy, DM me your address. But thank you, my friend, for being with us. I appreciate it, and thank you so much for the book and for your gifts. And I am wishing you and Wendy the best of luck in continuing to get your For message out there. So I am sure I will be seeing you around. But thank you for being with us. And the rest of you guys, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you again next week when we are diving further into all these topics and talking about the role debt has in our lives. We will see you next week.
Bye.